Welcome to this lesson on G1 phase, which stands for gap 1 phase. This is the first growth phase that cells go through after they complete division. The G1 phase is a critical period where the cell prepares itself for the next major step in the cell cycle. Throughout this lesson, we'll explore what happens during this phase and why it's so important for proper cell function. So what exactly is G1 phase? The letter G stands for gap, and the number 1 indicates this is the first gap phase in the cell cycle. It occurs immediately after a cell has completed mitosis and divided into 2 daughter cells. During G1, the newly formed cell begins to grow larger and synthesizes the proteins it will need for the next phase, which is DNA replication. Think of G1 as a preparation period, where the cell gets ready for the demanding task of copying its entire genome. To understand where G1 fits in the overall cell cycle, let's look at its position. The cell cycle consists of 4 main phases. First comes M phase, where mitosis occurs and the cell divides. Immediately after M phase, the cell enters G1 phase. Following G1 is S phase, where DNA synthesis happens and the chromosomes are replicated. After S phase comes G2 phase, the second gap phase, which prepares the cell for another round of mitosis. So G1 occurs right after division and right before DNA replication, making it a crucial transition period. During G1 phase, the cell is incredibly busy with several key activities. First, cell growth occurs as the cell increases in size and volume to reach the dimensions needed for eventual division. Second, protein synthesis ramps up as the cell produces the enzymes and proteins required for DNA replication in the upcoming S phase. Third, energy production accelerates as the cell accumulates ATP and stores nutrients to fuel the energy-intensive process of DNA synthesis. Finally, organelle duplication begins, with structures like mitochondria and ribosomes being replicated, so both daughter cells will have sufficient organelles after the next division. At the end of G1 phase, the cell reaches a critical decision point called the G1 checkpoint, also known as the restriction point. This is like a quality control station where the cell evaluates whether conditions are favorable enough to proceed to S phase and commit to another round of division. The checkpoint acts as a gate with 2 possible outcomes. If the cell passes the checkpoint, it proceeds forward to S phase where DNA replication will occur. However, if the cell fails the checkpoint, it either enters a resting state called G0 phase, or in cases of severe damage, it may undergo programmed cell death called apoptosis. So what exactly does the G1 checkpoint evaluate? There are 4 main factors. First is nutrient availability. The cell checks whether sufficient nutrients and growth factors are present in the environment to support the energy-demanding processes ahead. Second is cell size. The cell must have reached an adequate size for division, because dividing when too small would create daughter cells that are not viable. Third is DNA integrity. The checkpoint machinery scans for DNA damage that could lead to mutations if the cell were to replicate its genome in the current state. Finally, growth signals are assessed. The cell looks for external signals from neighboring cells and the surrounding tissue that indicate conditions are favorable for division. When cells fail to pass the G1 checkpoint, they often enter a state called G0 phase, which is a quiescent or resting state where the cell exits the active cell cycle. G0 is actually quite common and serves important functions. Some cells enter temporary G0, meaning they can re-enter G1 phase and resume the cell cycle when conditions improve, such as when nutrients become available again. Other cells enter permanent G0, where they remain for the rest of their lifespan. Fully differentiated cells like neurons and muscle cells typically exist in permanent G0 because they have specialized functions that don't require further division. Let's summarize the key takeaways about G1 phase. First, G1 is the first growth phase that occurs immediately after cell division is complete. Second, during G1, cells grow larger in size, produce the proteins they'll need, and prepare everything necessary for DNA replication. Third, The G1 checkpoint is a crucial decision point that determines whether the cell will proceed to S phase and continue dividing, or exit to G0 phase and stop cycling. And fourth, this checkpoint represents critical quality control that ensures only healthy, properly prepared cells continue through the cell cycle, which helps prevent the propagation of damaged or mutated cells. Understanding G1 phase is essential for grasping how cells regulate their growth and division.
If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Visit codelucky.com for more such useful content.